One number from Bank of America just made silver investors sit up straight: $135 an ounce. That's not a random guess. It's not a headline built for clicks. It's the base case from one of the largest banks on Wall Street, and the math behind it doesn't even use silver's supply or demand at all. Here's the contradiction. Silver is sitting near $58 right now, down more than half from its January peak. And yet Bank of America says it could still more than double from here. How does a bank justify a number that big, using a method that has nothing to do with mines, deficits, or industrial demand? Because the real story isn't about silver at all. It's about gold. And once you understand the ratio Bank of America is using, you'll never look at a silver price target the same way again. Before we get into the numbers, hit subscribe. Because we're about to walk through exactly how Wall Street's biggest banks build these forecasts, number by number, so you can judge for yourself whether $135 is realistic or reckless. Let's start with where silver actually sits today, because the forecast only makes sense once you see the drop that came before it. Silver hit an all-time high of $121.67 on January 29th, 2026. That was the peak of one of the fastest precious metals rallies in years. Investors were piling in, physical bar and coin premiums were spiking, and for a moment, silver looked unstoppable. Then it fell. Hard. Within days, silver crashed roughly 36%, dropping to around $75 an ounce. That kind of move, losing more than a third of its value in a matter of days, is the kind of price action that either destroys confidence in an asset, or, if you're a contrarian, makes you pay very close attention. Since then, silver has continued grinding lower. As of late July 2026, spot silver is trading around $58 an ounce, down more than 50% from that January high. For context, silver was trading near $81 back in April. That's a significant slide over just a few months. Now, here's where it gets interesting. During this entire decline, the fundamental story analysts keep pointing to hasn't changed at all. The Silver Institute's World Silver Survey for 2026 projects a supply deficit of 46.3 million ounces this year. The sixth consecutive year the world has consumed more silver than it has mined and recycled combined. Last year's deficit was 40.3 million ounces, so the shortfall isn't shrinking, it's widening. Since 2021, the cumulative silver deficit sits at roughly 762 million ounces pulled from above-ground stockpiles. To put that in perspective, global mine production for the year is projected at around 844 million ounces total. The deficit each year is now a meaningful fraction of total annual supply. There's another detail worth mentioning here. Earlier this year, China's silver imports reportedly surged 173% above the 10-year seasonal average. What made that spike unusual wasn't just the size of it, it was the mix of buyers behind it. Trade data suggested two separate groups were moving at the same time. Retail investors who found gold too expensive and shifted into silver as a cheaper way to get precious metals exposure, and solar panel manufacturers racing to secure physical supply ahead of policy deadlines. Two completely unrelated motivations, both pulling on the same limited pool of metal at the same time. That's part of what makes silver behave so differently from gold in the first place. Gold is almost entirely an investment and reserve asset. Central banks and investors hold it, but almost nobody melts it down to build a product. Silver is both an investment asset and an industrial input at the same time. That means its price gets pulled by two very different kinds of buyers who don't always move together. And every so often, as we just saw with China, both of them show up in the market at once. So you have a metal trading 50% below its yearly high, while the physical shortage behind it keeps getting worse, not better. And while two very different buyer groups are competing for the same shrinking pool of supply. That's the tension Bank of America is stepping into with this forecast. So what exactly did Bank of America say? The forecast comes from Michael Widmer, the bank's head of metals research. Unlike a lot of Wall Street price targets, which tend to move in narrow bands, analysts nudging a number up or down by a few percentage points, and calling it a year-end target, Widmer put out something dramatically wider. He projected silver could trade anywhere between $135 and $309 an ounce by the end of 2026. That's not a typo, and it's worth sitting with for a second. The gap between the low end and the high end of that range is over $170. Very few institutional forecasts carry that kind of spread, and that spread itself tells you something about how unusual this call is. Here's what makes it even more interesting. This forecast isn't built primarily around silver's own supply and demand numbers, the deficit, the industrial usage, the mine output we just walked through. Instead, it's built around a completely different measurement, the relationship between gold and silver prices, known as the gold to silver ratio. If you've never heard of this ratio before, don't worry. We're about to break it down piece by piece because understanding it is the key to understanding where these numbers actually come from. And it's worth noting Bank of America isn't operating in complete isolation here. Around the same period, other major institutions were also raising precious metals forecasts. JP Morgan projected gold could reach $6,300 by the end of 2026. Deutsche Bank put its gold target near $6,000. UBS and Societe Generale each forecast gold topping out somewhere between $6,000 and $6,200. None of those are silver calls specifically, but they matter here because Bank of America's silver math depends directly on where gold ends up. If gold keeps climbing toward those levels other banks are projecting, that changes the silver number the ratio produces too. These forecasts aren't happening in a vacuum. They're all connected through the same ratio math we're about to walk through. The gold to silver ratio is a simple concept. It tells you how many ounces of silver it takes to buy 1 ounce of gold. If gold is trading at $4,000 and silver is trading at $58, you divide 4,000 by 58. That gives you a ratio of roughly 69 to 1. In other words, right now, it takes about 69 ounces of silver to equal the value of 1 ounce of gold. Why does this number matter? Because historically, this ratio moves in cycles. When investors think silver is cheap relative to gold, the ratio tends to be high, meaning it takes a lot of silver to match 1 ounce of gold. When silver becomes more expensive relative to gold, the ratio drops. Here's the historical context Bank of America is leaning on. In the modern era, this ratio is typically averaged somewhere between 40 to 1 and 60 to 1. But through 2025, the ratio spent much of the year running historically high, averaging around 91 to 1 for the first 10 months. That's far above the long-term average, which is exactly the kind of gap analysts pay attention to. When Widmer built this forecast earlier in 2026, the ratio was sitting closer to 59 to 1. Today, in late July, it's back up near 69 to 1. Either way, the core argument is the same. Historically, this ratio doesn't stay elevated forever. Eventually, it compresses, meaning silver has to rise faster than gold, or gold has to fall faster than silver, or some combination of both, until the ratio narrows back toward its historical range. That compression is the entire engine behind Bank of America's silver targets. It's not about how much silver is being mined. It's about the mathematical relationship between two metals, and what happens if that relationship reverts toward where it's traditionally traded. Let's slow down on this for a moment, because the mechanics matter. A high ratio, like the 69 to 1 we're seeing right now, means silver is historically cheap compared to gold. Think of it like two stocks in the same sector, where one has run up a lot and the other has lagged badly behind. Analysts who follow this ratio treat that kind of gap as a signal that money could eventually rotate from the expensive asset into the cheap one, closing the distance between them. That rotation has actually happened before, more than once. Back in 1980, during the Hunt Brothers episode we'll get into shortly, the ratio collapsed to 14 to 1. In 2011, during a major precious metals bull run, it compressed to 32 to 1. Both of those were periods when silver dramatically outperformed gold over a relatively short window. Bank of America's argument is essentially, it's happened twice before in the modern era, under similar conditions of monetary stress and rising precious metals demand, so it's not unreasonable to think it could happen a third time. Of course, it happened before is not the same as it will happen again. A ratio reverting to its historical average is a pattern, not a law of physics. But it's a pattern serious institutional analysts do watch closely, and it's the entire foundation this forecast is built on. Now let's get into the actual math, because this is where the forecast goes from abstract theory to concrete numbers. Widmer didn't invent new ratio targets out of thin air. He anchored both price targets to real historical extremes, moments when the gold-silver ratio hit its lowest points in the past 100 years. The first anchor point is 2011. During that year's precious metals rally, the ratio compressed all the way down to 32 to 1, meaning it only took 32 ounces of silver to match 1 ounce of gold, a huge compression from today's levels. If you apply that same ratio to gold's current price level near $5,000, which was the assumption Bank of America was working from earlier this year, dividing gold's price by 32 gives you a silver price of approximately $135. That's the low end of the forecast, and it's built entirely on the idea that today's environment could eventually compress toward the tightness the market saw in 2011. The second anchor point goes back even further, to 1980. That year saw the famous Hunt Brothers silver squeeze, a period when two wealthy brothers attempted to corner the entire global silver market by buying up enormous physical quantities. The buying frenzy pushed the gold-silver ratio down to an extreme 14 to 1, the tightest the ratio has been in modern financial history. Apply that same 14 to 1 ratio to a gold price near $5,000, and you get the eye-popping figure of $309 an ounce, the top end of Bank of America's range. So to be clear about what this forecast actually is, it is not two independent price predictions. It's one mathematical relationship, the gold-silver ratio, applied to two different historical extremes. Widmer himself has been transparent about how extreme the upper number is. He's been quoted acknowledging that the price could, in his words, cap at 309, phrasing that stops well short of guaranteeing it. His broader point wasn't that $309 is likely. It's that even without hitting the extreme scenario, silver could still meaningfully outperform gold if the ratio simply moves back toward more historically normal levels. So is this forecast something to take seriously, or is it just an attention-grabbing headline? There's a case for both sides, and a responsible way to look at this is to weigh them honestly. On the side of taking it seriously, this isn't the first time silver has moved this violently. We already covered the January 2026 spike to $121.67, followed by a 36% crash within days. That kind of volatility is proof that silver is capable of extreme, fast moves when conditions align. Exactly the kind of move Bank of America's forecast assumes could happen again, just in the opposite direction this time. There's also the structural supply story running underneath all of this. Remember, this is the 6th consecutive year of a global silver deficit, and roughly 70% of the world's silver isn't even mined for its own sake. It comes as a byproduct of copper, lead, and zinc mining. That means even if silver prices rise sharply, mining companies can't simply ramp up silver-specific production to meet demand, because their operations are built around base metal economics, not silver economics. Supply is structurally slow to respond, no matter what the price does. On top of that, industrial demand keeps climbing. Silver Institute data shows industrial applications, solar panels, electric vehicles, semiconductors, and increasingly data center and AI-related hardware, now make up roughly 58% of total silver consumption. These are not speculative buyers who might disappear if prices swing. These are manufacturers who need the physical metal to build products, and that demand doesn't reverse quickly just because prices went up. Think about what that 70% byproduct figure actually means in practice. A copper mining company doesn't decide how much to dig based on the silver price. It decides based on the copper price, because copper is the primary product, and silver is just what comes out alongside it. So even if silver shoots up to $100 or $150 an ounce tomorrow, that mining company isn't going to suddenly open new shafts or expand operations just to capture more silver. The economics driving their decisions are almost entirely disconnected from the silver market. That's a structural bottleneck that doesn't resolve itself quickly, regardless of what price silver reaches. New primary silver mines, when they are built from scratch, typically take somewhere in the range of 5 to 10 years to move from discovery to actual production. That's not a gap that closes in a single price cycle. Meanwhile, on the demand side, physical investment demand, meaning actual bars, coins, and exchange-traded silver products, has been forecast to keep rising in 2026, even as some industrial buyers pull back slightly in response to higher prices. That creates an unusual push and pull, manufacturers cutting back a little where they can substitute other materials, while retail and institutional investors keep adding physical silver to portfolios. Both of those pressures are happening inside the same tight byproduct-constrained supply pool we just described. Now, on the side of caution. The forecast itself has an unusually wide range, over $170 between the low and high end, and Bank of America's own analysts have acknowledged that. A range that wide signals genuine uncertainty, not precision. When a forecast has to reach back to 1980 and a market cornering event by two individual investors to justify its upper bound, that's a signal the top end number represents an extreme case, not a base expectation. There's also a mismatch worth flagging directly. The ratio math behind this forecast was built assuming gold near $5,000 an ounce. As of late July 2026, gold is trading closer to $4,050. That gap matters, because the entire silver target is derived by dividing gold's price by a ratio. If gold isn't at the level the original calculation assumed, the resulting silver number shifts too. This is exactly why it's called a forecast, not a fact. The assumptions underneath it are still in motion. And finally, remember that silver's own recent history includes a 36% crash in a matter of days. A metal capable of moving that fast in one direction is just as capable of moving unpredictably in the other. Analysts who track the space have noted that a genuine push back toward triple-digit silver would likely require several things lining up at once. A weaker dollar, sustained physical tightness, stronger investor inflows, and renewed inflation or geopolitical pressure. That's a lot of variables that all need to move in the same direction together. So where does that leave things heading into the rest of 2026? The nearest catalyst is the Federal Reserve's meeting on July 28th and 29th. Markets widely expect the Fed to hold interest rates steady at this meeting, though some participants believe a move could come as early as September. That decision matters directly for silver because higher rates tend to make non-yielding assets like precious metals less attractive, while a pause or a cut tends to support them. There's also the ongoing geopolitical backdrop. Tensions in the Middle East have already been disrupting shipping routes and keeping oil prices elevated, which feeds into broader inflation expectations. Inflation data has actually been cooling somewhat. The most recent reading came in at 3.5% year over year, down from 4.2% the month before, the first monthly decline in years. That's the kind of shift that could ease pressure on precious metals if it continues. And underneath all of it, the structural deficit keeps running in the background regardless of what happens in any single month. Metals Focus, the research firm behind the Silver Institute's data, projects annual deficits in the range of 50 to 80 million ounces persisting through 2030. That's a multi-year floor of demand that isn't going away, even if short-term price action stays choppy. None of this guarantees Bank of America's target gets hit. What it does mean is that the two forces driving this forecast, the historical gold-silver ratio and the physical supply deficit, are both still very much in play heading into the back half of 2026. It's also worth watching gold itself closely, since it's the other half of this entire equation. Gold has been trading in a tight range recently, opening below $4,100 in late July as investors weighed the Fed decision against safe haven demand tied to Middle East instability. Just a few days earlier, gold had briefly pushed above $4,130, with some technical analysts pointing toward $4,185 to $4,246 as the next area to watch if that breakout held. None of these are silver numbers directly, but remember, every one of these gold moves feeds straight into the ratio math behind the silver forecast. If gold keeps grinding higher while silver stays roughly flat, the ratio widens further, which is exactly the setup. Bank of America's thesis depends on eventually reversing. There's also a broader monetary policy backdrop worth keeping an eye on. The European Central Bank recently held its own rates steady while leaving the door open to a possible increase in September, which suggests major central banks globally are still cautious rather than committing firmly in either direction, when the world's largest central banks are this uncertain. And that uncertainty itself tends to support demand for precious metals as a hedge, which is part of why so many banks have been raising both gold and silver targets around the same time this year. So here's the honest takeaway. Bank of America's $135 to $309 target isn't built on wishful thinking. It's built on a real historical pattern in how gold and silver have priced against each other for over a century. The 2011 rally gives the low end. The 1980 Hunt Brothers squeeze gives the extreme end. And the physical deficit running underneath both of those scenarios is real, verified, and getting wider each year, not smaller. But it's still a forecast, not a promise, and the bank's own analysts have been upfront that the wide range reflects genuine uncertainty, not conviction in a single number. A $170 spread between the low and high end of any prediction is the market's way of saying, we're confident in the direction, but not in exactly how far it goes. That's an important distinction to sit with before anyone makes a decision based on a headline number alone. What matters most at the end of the day is understanding the mechanism behind the number, not just the number itself. Anyone can repeat $135 silver as a headline. Far fewer people can explain that it comes from dividing a gold price by a ratio anchored to 2011, or that the upper figure traces back to a market squeeze from 1980. Now, you're one of the people who actually understands where that number came from and what would realistically need to happen for it to get there. If you found this breakdown useful, subscribe for more of these deep dives into how major financial institutions actually build their forecasts, not just what the headlines say. See you in the next one.